Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. I just want to let you know that I am recording this session so that people who might want to watch it at a later date will have access to that. So I am Teresa Culver. I am the director of the Undergraduate Program in Civil Engineering at UVA. And my goals are sort of two-part today. I want to give you an overview of what civil engineering is, and then specifically more about civil engineering at UVA. So civil engineers, we are directly responsible for creating and managing basic infrastructure of society. And very much now we have themes of a sustainable and resilient communities. And feel free, if you have questions along the way, you can ask, but I also am reserving quite a bit of time at the end for people who might have questions. So a lot of times when people think of civil engineering, if you know much about civil engineering, they often think what I'm showing here. They think about the design and construction of major infrastructure. And that's definitely part of civil engineering. That is an important part of civil engineering, but civil engineering is defined as a very broad field. And so in addition to this, we have many parts. In that UVA undergraduate program, we give students a chance to explore the breadth of civil and environmental engineering. And then this graph here on the screen is showing you where recent graduates, and this is within a year or two of completing their undergraduate degrees, what kind of fields they go into. And so you can see they distribute themselves across the breadth of our field. So construction and management of construction projects is an important component. That's the pinkish color there, but all areas of civil engineering are represented. So some students will do transportation engineering. Transportation engineering, civil engineers, we don't build the actual vehicles that move. We don't build cars or planes, but we build the systems through which they move. So the roadways, the bridges, and then a lot of it also is the systematically thinking about those systems so that the community can move through those systems efficiently and sustainably. Water resource and environmental engineering is an important component of our field. So actually I am an environmental water resource engineer. And so at the undergraduate level, all the students who come to our program will get a degree that says civil engineering. But environmental and water resource engineering is a component of that. Within the field, we see those as actually two things. Environmental engineering is related to pollution and treatment, while water resource engineering relates to volumes of water. So that is flooding issues, water supply. And so those are two areas. And we do, as I will show, students have an opportunity who are interested can focus in those areas. We also have structural engineering. So those would be the people who do the designs of major facilities, bridges, stadiums, skyscrapers. Some people will go to work and call themselves a general civil engineer. They will work in a field where they are expected to be able to work across these areas. And so that they will have to have many different skills in their daily task. More and more of our students will say that they're going into sustainability, especially looking at areas where the energy and infrastructure interrelate. Land development has to do with taking green areas and then the redevelopment specifically and often of the land surface itself. You also see on this chart, we have a fairly decent sized piece of the pie in other. And one of the things we are proud of at UVA is that students are trained broadly enough that they can do, they're not pigeonholed narrowly into the field of their degree. And that we have students who go into related areas like environmental and urban planning or material science. Some go into law or education. And so there are other opportunities that a civil engineering degree from UVA allows for. Okay, there we go. Another common assumption is that civil engineering is somehow old-fashioned, but I want to really emphasize that there are huge challenges in our field, and we really desperately, there's a huge need for civil and environmental engineers, and we need a new generation of engineers that will help address these challenges that we have. What you're looking on the screen right now is the brand new 2021 infrastructure report card that the American Society of Civil Engineers creates, where they look at all these different areas of our infrastructure and give each a grade. In fact, we actually just went up to a C minus. Our previous US infrastructure report card was a D plus. So we have many challenges in our infrastructure systems, even though we are one of the wealthier developed countries in the world. Our infrastructure needs new, it's aging, and it needs new investment. And when we rebuild infrastructure, we have to build it for the future. And we have new challenges in how we can't just make the old infrastructure, we need to make new infrastructure for our systems. One of the challenges that we have right now is climate change. So that will mean that we can't just assume constants or averages of the past. We have to be predictive of what the future will look like and how our infrastructure systems will cope with a future that will likely be different than our past. What the screen is showing you here in the upper left is, you might recognize that as Hurricane Harvey, which is covering most of the Gulf of Mexico, the enormous storm that hit the coast of Texas and dropped about 4 feet of rainfall and massive flooding potential that was there. So we do expect, unfortunately, as the climate changes, there's a likelihood of more severe events and more common and more severe. On the right bottom is from Hurricane Florence. So this is closer to our mid-Atlantic here. It hit North Carolina. And another impact of major storms can be the pollution that occurs. And so this is an image from space where you can see massive amounts of pollution as waste management systems were overwhelmed by the hurricane and discharging into the ocean. So again, we need to think about how are we managing these systems so that they will respond sustainably and reliably to a future which will have more extreme events. The other thing that we have is that we are all part of the revolution in computing and cloud computing and sensor technologies that will allow our future infrastructure to be fundamentally different and responsive in a way that we have not been able to make infrastructure in the past. And so that is definitely something that we focus on and trying to prepare our students and future graduates to create an infrastructure that can respond to the needs of the users and the residents and to changing conditions. I saved towards the end. I have other examples. I can't cover everything that we are doing and many challenges in civil engineering. I want to get to some basics about our program for those of you who may be future students in our program. As you may know, at UVA, students who come in for their first year at UVA are general engineers. So they haven't joined a major yet. And so the first year in engineering looks very similar across majors. In our program, in the second year, there are some civil specific classes that students will take. So a civil techniques class really focuses as an introduction to sustainable design. The statics and strength of materials classes are applications of physics if we're going to build things, we have to understand how those systems will carry loads, and those are the basic classes that will need to be built upon for future classes, ranging from the physics of water, the physics of soils, and the physics of various building materials. And then every student takes a class in Intro to Environmental Engineering, which in fact is a class that I currently teach. So that is the second year. But as I already tried to give you a feel, is that the field of civil and environmental engineering is very broad. And we are committed in our program to give students the ability to tailor their experience to what their own career goals might be. So going into there you go. Going into their third year undergraduate program, students then choose a track within, they're all going to get a degree that says civil engineering, but there are different tracks to focus on. So to be a civil engineer for our accreditation system, by definition, means a student has exposure to and ability in at least 4 areas of civil engineering. But they don't say which 4. And so by allowing students to adjust where their focus is, they again can meet their own objectives. So the infrastructure systems is the broadest track that students can follow. And it will introduce students to almost all of those areas that I previously introduced. So I tell students, if they're not sure what they want to do, you should do the infrastructure systems. It will give you the most options when you graduate. And in fact, it is our largest track, with 50 to 60% of the students tend to pick infrastructure systems. We have a separate track in environmental and water resource engineering. And so even though the degree will say environmental engineering, students who follow this track are very well positioned to become professional licensed environmental engineers. So all engineering students, after they finish their 4-year, or at the very end of their 4-year degree, take the fundamentals of engineering exam. And the students in the environmental and water resources track, and those are disciplinary, the students in this track actually take the environmental engineering fundamentals, while the students in the other tracks take the civil engineering fundamentals. The other tracks, and we have 2 brand new tracks. We are just making a couple changes in our curriculum. And so any student who would be entering soon would have these new tracks available to them. So we also have a track in construction engineering and management. I already noted that many of our graduates end up working in this field. And so this track allows students to get a greater depth in the business management skills that will be needed if you are going to be the construction engineer responsible for a $100 million construction project. There is a huge amount of scheduling and business and other skills that are needed to pull that off in a timely fashion. And then we'll have a track that allows students to get greater depth in structural engineering. So that is the more, the structural engineers will create the designs for the structures. They hand those designs to the construction engineers who actually see them implemented. As I said before, and I'll say again, regardless of which track that you would do, they all get a degree in civil engineering. All these tracks also have electives. So depending on what you do with your elective classes, you can get more depth within one area, or you can broaden your experience. But it does allow students to create an undergraduate experience that best meets their goals. And in the 4th year, all students do a major design team project across the 4th year. And we offer students a range of choices that span these different areas. So the students can find a project that is in an area they're interested in, and the projects also range on how much design, how much research they're in. We have a range of staff members who are available to help students to make sure that people are moving through the program in a timely fashion, have access to work in our laboratories, laboratory classes, have access to in IT needs. And so we have a range of staff who are available for our students. We also have a lot of faculty. One of the challenges in this virtual world, it's difficult to have a lot of faculty on one Zoom call. So we decided I'm taking the role here, and the other faculty members. This is just a selection of some of the other faculty members in our department. Starting at the upper left-hand corner is Brian Smith, who is the chairperson of our department. Our department is both civil engineering and systems engineering. So there's degree programs in both of those areas. And there's degree programs at the undergraduate and graduate levels. Going in a clockwise fashion, next to him is Lisa Colosi Peterson. She's an environmental engineer, works especially in the areas of applications of microbiology as potential pathogens and also treatment and energy systems. Next to her in the upper right is Jose Gomez, who teaches a structural engineer and teaches upper level classes in structural engineering and sometimes in construction engineering. Below him is Donna Chen, who is a transportation engineer. And so she teaches the introductory transportation engineering class at the undergraduate level. In the bottom middle is Devin Harris, who is another structural engineer, and he teaches the introductory structural and materials class. And on the bottom left corner is Andres Clarence, who's an environmental engineer and is especially interested in the interface between the environment and energy. And these are just some of our faculty members, but we, as the students also have options, we clearly have grad or faculty who can teach across a broad spectrum of the field of civil and environmental engineering. And we have some amazing students too. So the undergraduate program, and this is a capstone senior design team of mine from a previous year. It's really an honor, I find, working with the undergraduate students, the amazing students who come to UVA from across the country and around the world. And I'm also proud to say that UVA Engineering has one of the highest percentage female undergraduate students. And in fact, the civil engineering program, we are now graduating classes that have a majority of women students. This is just a picture from an American Society of Civil Engineers student chapter event. So the undergraduate students, many participate in the American Society of Civil Engineers. They have a competition every year between other civil engineering programs. And this is a team with the canoe that they're in is actually that they designed and built and it's made out of concrete. If you've done any canoeing, you know putting 4 adults in any canoe is challenging, let alone in a canoe of concrete. But it's just one of the fun events that they get to do. And they also have opportunities to meet many professional engineers through the society. There is, after this session at 2 p.m., there will be an opportunity if you're interested to meet some of the students we'll be hosting, and you can meet the civil engineering students and find out about civil engineering from the perspective of students in the program. So yes, as I just said, at 2 p.m. you can meet the civil students. If you need that link, I can give that to you. But with the time we have left, I can open it up if anyone has questions that you would like to answer. Oh, I see down here, how many civil engineers pursue a more technical career versus a more generalized career? Well, Brett, what I would say is that when you say general, if you mean general civil engineering, it's probably less common than focusing more on one of the sub areas. Our students from UVA, about 40% or so within 5 years of their undergraduate degree will be pursuing a graduate degree where they can get more technical specialized training if they are interested. Those advanced degrees might be in business administration. One of the things in civil engineering, there's a lot of smaller companies. It's very reasonable if you want, as a civil engineer, to imagine having your own company someday. So the business part is important. So yeah, so I guess maybe I'd have to know a little bit more what you think is the difference between technical versus general. There is, in practice, a lot of engineers end up doing project management, which maybe, let's be realistic, most of the engineers aren't using calculus every day. They're often managing projects and teams of people. But one of the things I like about the field is it's up to what you like. Like if you like the technical part, you want to be doing the hardcore design of structures, you can do that. If you like interacting with a range of people in environmental engineering, we often have to work with community members and reach out and have a lot of the human contact aspect. There's all different types of options within the field, depending on what your personal preferences are. Are there other questions? I could show you a couple more, talk about a couple of kinds of projects that faculty and students are working with in the time we have left. I'm more than happy to answer additional questions if you have them. So you can either speak out or write in the chat, and I'll try to answer those if you have them. Well, one of the things I forgot to say about our program, another thing that I really like about our program is the size of the program at the undergraduate level. So together, civil and environmental engineering, if you take away computer scientists, if you just look at engineers practicing in the US, there are more civil and environmental engineers practicing in the US than any other kinds of engineer. So it's the biggest field in engineering. So some schools have giant programs in civil engineering. There are programs who graduate more civil engineers a year than our entire school of engineering. So we have, I believe, a very high quality civil engineering program. We can place students in the top graduate programs in the country. Our graduates are very sought after for professional hires. But we actually only graduate about 45 to 50 students a year, which means as a student, you can really get to know your student colleagues. The faculty can know all the students that are in their class. And so it's a really good size that people don't become invisible. So since I have a few minutes, I will just show some other projects. Like here is a project that takes cloud computing to look at managing transportation systems and how they could respond in a major storm event. So that computer modeling and simulation is really important in many fields, including the environment and the water resources area. And if you're worried about an extreme event like a hurricane, it's really helpful if the computing power is occurring in the cloud in a place that might not be under the extreme event at that time. But so we have faculty, this is work by Professor Goodall, who has been working with the Virginia Department of Transportation, helping predict where the transportation impacts could occur as a storm event moves through. I see there is a question about how many UVA students go into environmental engineering. Well, of the undergraduates, historically, it's about 30% of them are doing the, about 30% do the environmental and water resources track. And I'd say that percentage is growing over time, and we have more and more of our students going into that area. And actually, at least half of our faculty are in the environmental and water resource area. So it is something that we have a lot of things going on. And it doesn't, if that's something you're thinking about, really doesn't matter whether your degree says environmental engineering as far as getting licensed. You know, it is very common that training in environmental engineering would be through a civil engineering program. And I also think that our degree that's environmental and water resources is a stronger degree than a pure environmental degree. That is, a pure environmental degree would be all about pollution and treatment, and it would be closest to a chemical engineering degree. And there's just frankly a lot of work in the water resources area. So combining that expertise with water resources so that you can do watershed management, you can do flood control, you can do stormwater, is actually a higher demand degree than a pure environmental engineering degree that doesn't include the water resources. And I mentioned advanced materials. So UVA has a very strong material science department. And so many students might choose to add like a material science minor to their civil degree. We have a strong environmental science department. So adding an environmental science minor to your undergraduate degree is a nice combination. Some people minor in urban planning, which is the more governmental side of thinking about how a city runs, and is a nice complement to the technical engineering side. There's also an engineering business minor, and there's a global sustainability minor. Those are probably some of our most common minors. But this is just work showing here on integrating some new emerging materials into infrastructure systems that some of our faculty are doing. And I'll just give one more example here, is the whole systematically thinking about how infrastructure, energy, and the environment are related, and how we use water and how that relates to energy demand. And so that's one of the advantages of having a department that has both systems and civil engineering together. We did that because so many of our faculty who might otherwise be in civil engineering are also systems engineers, and infrastructure are all systems. So this is just an example, and there's work on how do we sequester carbon? Can we use algae for energy? There's a variety of work going on there. I think I'm about to use up all of my time. If there's any other last questions, I'll be happy to try to address those. If you are bashful and don't want to ask a question now, you may also send me an email. I'd be more than happy to answer that. I'll put my email address in the chat, and I could talk with you later if you have additional questions. I hope you found this overview helpful. And again, if you have questions, like you want to find out the student experience, the next session, there is a link. To go to the student session on civil engineering. Again, that will be some of our current students talking about their experience. Okay, great. Well, then I will, if that's all, I'll be signing off on this session.